Good morning, everybody, and thanks for joining us. It's really lovely and sunny in Bristol, where I am today, so I hope it is where you are too. I'm Lisa, and I'm the head of marketing at Torchbox, and I head up all of our events, and we've got a cracker for you today. We all know that Facebook ads can be a great tool for charities, as they give you control of your budget, and they give you laser-focused targeting as well. But the landscape has changed quite a lot recently, and so unless you've got a really good testing strategy, you might not be getting the best bang for your buck. So that's why we're here today, and two of our wonderful digital account managers are going to be sharing their top 5 testing tips for Facebook campaigns based on their experience of working with some amazing organisations such as these. And so we've got Gemma, who is working on projects for clients including Islamic Relief UK and Action for Children, and also we're joined by Marnie, who's working on campaigns for organisations like Breast Cancer Now, and we've got Dan here today as we've seen, and Motor Neurone Disease Association. And we're also joined by Amna, who is our head of digital acquisition, and she is currently very busy leading on our Ukraine appeal for the DEC. And Amna's going to be helping out with the questions, so fielding those and helping to answer the questions. This webinar this morning is only going to be about 40 minutes, and that includes time for questions as well, so it's quite a snappy one. Amna will be answering some of your questions on the chat and Q&A as we go through the presentation, and we've also got some time for some live questions at the end as well. For anybody who would like to use subtitles for this webinar, you can select live transcript from the bottom menu on your Zoom window, and hopefully that should work okay. If you have any problems, let me know. And I'm also recording the session today because there's quite a lot of information to get through, so I will send it to you all after. And I think that's about it from me rabbiting on, so I am going to hand over to Gemma to get things going.
Brilliant, thanks Lisa. So let's get stuck into a big topic for 2022. Test number 1, audiences. It's possibly one of the biggest things that you should be testing this year in your Facebook campaigns. This is one of the areas we get asked about the most, and one element of digital marketing that has seen a big shift in the last few years as privacy has become such a hot topic. So why are audiences so important for your testing strategy this year? Early 2021, the iOS 14 updates and subsequent privacy updates from Meta, as Facebook are now called, had a significant impact on various elements of advertising, including tracking, targeting, and attribution. One of the main impacts for targeting was audience size, and you may have noticed the potential reach across your audiences drop off when these changes were implemented last year. For those that aren't too familiar with the update, the main element that impacted advertisers was that Apple made it easier for users to opt out of data sharing from apps like Facebook. This resulted in a huge loss in data and audiences. Almost 12 months later, and Meta began implementing more restrictions, specifically on interest targeting, as they tightened their privacy policy and protection of their users. This involves the phasing out of many key interests that charities have historically relied on for prospecting audiences. These interests have also often generated the best results for charities looking to find people impacted by or interested in their specific cause. You may have noticed this lovely warning in your account over the last few months, prompting you to update your ad sets. And last week, the impacted interests were removed. So interest categories considered sensitive are no longer available as targeting options. These include health causes, sexual orientation, religious practices, and groups and interests focused on politics and social issues. But don't panic, folks. It might all seem a bit doom and gloom, but as the world moves to a more privacy conscious way of advertising, this can really provide some opportunities for charities. As we've seen, many interest-based options that charities have relied on are no longer available as an option. So identifying new relevant audiences and which key segments are going to drive results for you is critical. It's a chance to diversify your audiences, attract some new supporters, and potentially reduce competition by avoiding crossover with other charities. It's also an opportunity to avoid trying to guess who your audience is and allow new advances in machine learning to help you find people who would have otherwise sat outside of your traditional audience personas. There are a few things you'll want to avoid while testing audiences. One common setup we see within platforms like Facebook and Instagram is to test too many audiences at one time, breaking them into really distinct segments, which means you often generate minimal learnings about what works best for your campaign. Obviously, the more audiences you have, the further your budget has to stretch. And this then limits how much each audience is served and how quickly it can learn and optimize. You might be aware of the learning phase, in which a certain number of conversions, usually around 50, are needed before the ad set is deemed to have generated enough data. If a campaign gets stuck in this phase, it can increase your costs and reduce efficiency. But by grouping audiences together into broader segments, you can dedicate more budget to each one and allow better on-platform optimizations, allowing you to exit the learning phase quickly. You'll also want to avoid having too much overlap across your audiences. When you set up different segments, you may think they're all really unique. However, the same users can have similar crossover in interests. The audience overlap tool within Ads Manager is a really useful feature that helps you see how much your audiences cross over. This can then help you decide where you might need to merge them into larger segments. In this example, you can see that 87% of the grandparents audience is also in the second comparison audience. You therefore might want to combine these to ensure you can increase your reach and optimize within a larger pool of people. The overlap tool is always worth checking, as overlap can create issues with testing and not give you a clear indication of exactly what is performing well. If you don't already know, the overlap tool can be found in your audiences library in Ads Manager. Just select the audiences that you'd like to compare, navigate to the little 3-dot menu, and then select Show Audience Overlap. Using granular audience segments can also restrict your reach by not letting Facebook optimize efficiently. If you split out audiences into distinct groups, Facebook has limited options to find people outside of that group who might be likely to engage and convert. So make the most of new machine learning and automation technology on the platform to increase the reach and performance of your campaigns. So based on all the changes in the platform, our biggest recommendation for this year would be to go big and try broad audience if you haven't already. We tested a group of interest-based segments against a broad audience to generate sign-ups to a virtual carol concert last Christmas for cancer support charity Maggie's. Using broad targeting resulted in a 5.7% increase in conversion rate, along with a 24% decrease in the cost per sign-up. This particular campaign was focused on a virtual event, so a much easier call to action for a broad audience. We've seen it work on some campaigns, but not so well on others, so it's really worth testing across a range of asks to see where you can get the best results. This type of targeting relies on a significant amount of conversion data to be successful. In order for Facebook to find the right people, it needs data on who that is. So really think about your campaign objective when planning your test to avoid just burning through your budget. And don't try and guess who your audience are. Use your existing data to create remarketing and lookalike audiences. You can upload data from your database to match to users across the platforms, and this can help to re-engage previous supporters and to personalize your messaging. You can then also create lookalike audiences based on attributes of your existing supporters. Check your privacy policy though to ensure that you're informing individuals of how you're using their data. And even if you can't currently use custom match lists, lookalikes can also be built based on the Facebook pixel. You could create lookalike audience based on people that visit specific landing pages or that complete a particular action, such as watching a video, donating, or signing up to an event. As part of the new on-platform donate feature, Facebook now also allows you to create lookalikes based on donors and fundraising. This is a great way to find new audiences based on people that have actively supported your charity. So one of the main disadvantages with broad audiences is that you don't always know much about these people. But by starting big, you can create a staged approach to more defined audiences. If you're not already utilizing remarketing audiences, start setting them up based on traffic or other engagement, such as video views. This can then be used to remarket users that didn't convert and to also create lookalike audiences out of those most engaged users. That was quite a chunky section, but after all the changes in the platform, we'd really recommend testing new audiences this year. So after looking at testing who you're actually targeting, let's focus on some strategies for converting them. Test number 2, warming up your audiences. Rather than always going in with a financial ask, it can be more efficient to warm your audience up first. So why is this worth testing? Well, there are lots and lots of charities vying for similar audiences on Facebook across lots of different types of asks. So this means it's getting harder to generate revenue in this competitive space. You're also not just competing against other charities, you're competing against all the other content on Facebook from brands, family and friends, as well as the fact that people are often doing other things while scrolling through Facebook, such as watching Netflix or commuting. Finding content that grabs attention, maintains it, and drives action in a short amount of time can be really tough. Going straight in for a financial ask also presumes that the user is ready to convert. but many audiences need more information or reassurance before they get to the final point in the funnel. So it's really important to learn what resonates with your audiences at various stages. Warming up audiences helps to avoid reaching out to cold audiences with big financial asks with no prior context or engagement. People can sometimes be a little bit mistrusting and need some reassurance that their hard-earned money is going to make a difference and that your charity's mission aligns with their ethos and beliefs. Also, avoid relying on your remarketing audiences too much. Keep an eye on the frequency and don't hit them with too many financial asks. They want to feel engaged and appreciated too. So use the funnel from awareness through to consideration and finally conversion to think about what types of call to action might engage cold audiences at each stage. Things we've seen work well at the top of the funnel are advocacy asks, such as petitions or email your MP prompts, as this puts the potential donor in the frame of mind that it's a cause they care about. We've also seen value exchange call to actions work well, where charities offer something, usually in exchange for a user's data, so they can continue that journey. This can be something really simple, like a digital download, a printed guide related to your cause, or something more tangible like a tote bag or other product. As we've discussed, using the strategy to engage audiences before asking them for a donation can really help build an emotional connection to the cause, so a user is more in a mindset to help when the financial ask is made. The potential donor's already done something that says they care about your cause, so the donation ask is easier and the intent is higher. We tested this strategy with Refugee Council following the terrible situation in Afghanistan last year. Refugee Council first came to us with this campaign as they had seen the cost per donor on Facebook increase significantly following the changes in 2021, and were struggling to make Facebook ads an efficient tool for recruiting new donors. Rather than run a standard donate campaign at Christmas, we worked with them to test a different approach. As many refugees were spending their first winter in the UK, we used creative that prompted users to write a message of hope to the refugee, making them feel welcome. Users were served an ad on Facebook, which linked through to a landing page with some information about the refugee crisis and space for them to leave their message, along with data capture. After submitting a message, they were taken to a thank you page, which also included a donate ask. This had information about the support that Refugee Council provides and examples of how donations would help. The results smashed all targets, generating over 9,500 messages from refugees in the UK. The conversion to donate also generated a higher conversion rate than previous campaigns and one of the lowest cost per donor that Refugee Council had seen from paid social campaigns. And amazingly, 96% of those that donated were also brand new donors. So it really represented a significant opportunity in terms of lifetime value and other ways to engage with these donors. And Facebook has its own built-in lead generation funnels through the use of forms, which Marnie's going to talk about in a little bit more detail later. And these can be a great way to engage with people on the platform, capture data, and then create follow-up journeys. And finally, video can also be a great way to introduce a complex issue and generate engagement, remembering to create remarketing audiences from those that have viewed the video. We often see that initially targeting users with a video, followed up by an image with a more direct call to action, can work well at driving conversions.
Thanks, Gemma. So test 3 is creative testing. Creative testing might seem like a really obvious choice and something you might already be trying with dynamic creatives, but building a good creative testing strategy is especially important to help you cut through the noise on Facebook. Today, we just wanted to share some of the creative journeys that we've taken with charities we work with, testing different formats and styles at each stage of the campaign. So as Facebook becomes more competitive, finding the creative or ad text that has that slightly higher click-through rate or conversion rate is going to save you money and is becoming more essential. Testing allows you to really develop the messaging, creatives and headlines that resonate best with your audience for your different campaign propositions. And bearing in mind you might be reaching new, broader audiences as part of test 1, this is particularly important. In 2020, we ran a digital marketing review for the DEC, and as part of this, we looked at how they're using creatives across different platforms such as Facebook and Instagram. Really similarly to other organisations, they use scenes from disaster zones during appeals, but we found that lots of the images were polished enough to look almost staged. Whilst these creatives had performed well for them in past appeals, there was an opportunity here to introduce some rawness to their creatives, and given that the DEC mobilises during an emergency, the pace and the response to an emergency is fast, and it felt like this sense of urgency could be shown in their images. Together with our designer, we spent a year developing and testing different types of creatives and found that personal imagery and, interestingly, more informational images worked better to drive results. Finally, having a testing plan and bringing in new creatives a couple of weeks into the campaign can help reduce audience fatigue. So an example test plan could look something like this. Test 1, you could test authentic photography of people versus objects and scenes. Test 2, you do your winning test against UGC fill imagery. And test 3, your winning test against text overlays. And all of this can help shape that campaign as it goes on. So what to avoid? We frequently see charities testing loads of images with different content, illustrations, people, objects with no clear strategy. So some things to avoid: have a clear plan for testing, like the example I shared on the last slide. And remember, Facebook needs some time to optimize. So it can be a bit nerve-wracking waiting, but be patient. Often we see charities changing creatives after a couple of days, and this can affect Facebook's ability to exit the learning phase, and it may negatively impact performance, so give it time. And if you're testing Reels and Instagram stories and different platforms within Instagram, the assets need to feel consistent within these platforms. The wrong asset can feel jarring and more like a broadcast, so it's important to think about the mindset of your supporter when you're creating those assets. And finally, your creatives can be more than just emotive ways to get people to donate. Use your creatives to reflect your audience, to thank and engage with them at every step of the journey. So here are some of the ways that you can use creatives to build engagement. Firstly, if you're testing bigger, broader audiences this year, you'll need engaging content up front. Don't presume that people know who you are and why you exist. Use creatives to tell them in an engaging way. And this doesn't have to be a big budget brand awareness film. There's so many tools to help level the playing field these days. In a recent appeal we ran with a charity in a similar space, footage filmed on a director's phone of help being delivered on the ground performed best. And for a Spotify campaign with Action for Children, they recorded the audio using their phones. So this doesn't have to be an expensive process. Secondly, spend some time working out what is driving donations. Once you nail this, your jobs will become easier. So invest some time in this. And finally, don't forget to thank your audiences. We ran engagement ads with Breast Cancer Now last year, asking people to share their photos from their fundraising activities over the summer. This had an overwhelmingly positive response, with hundreds of photos being shared. Now they'll have loads of UGC content ready to test for next year, which solves some of the issues you might be facing about not having the right creatives. And here are some of the tests that you can run this year. On the left, we've included messaging styles that you can use, like cause-led or community-focused messaging. And on the right, there are some creative approaches to test, like UGC versus authentic fill photography. I won't go into all of these because that could be another session itself, but we'll share the slides with you afterwards. So test 4 is in-platform versus landing page tests. We're racing through them now. In-platform.
Marnie, sorry, just I wondered if this would be a good time just to pause, because Katie from Katie Bowen, I think at Bernardo's, had a question around testing, A/B testing, and I'd probably be good to get your thoughts on it. So the question is, what's your advice on using Facebook in-platform A/B testing? I've personally found it to be quite expensive and not very user-friendly to set up. However, when just running normal ads or dynamic ads, Facebook tends to run away with itself a little. She's asked for some views on this. In my opinion, we tend to avoid using A/B tests for that very reason. It's quite difficult. It's difficult to set up. You can't always test the right variables when you're setting up an A/B test. So at Torchbox, we tend to favor things like dynamic tests for creative testing. With audience testing, perhaps you might want to look at A/B testing, but even that, it's a lot easier, I think, to test without the need for the A/B test function within Facebook. But I don't know, Marnie and Gemma, if you had any thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think A/B testing can be useful for kind of the campaign setup, so testing different bidding strategies, but for creative testing, dynamic creatives can be the best. I mean, as you said, Katie, sometimes, you know, one asset performs best instantly, so you do see, you know, Facebook starts to optimize towards that. And yes, Simon, we do use dynamic creative when running campaigns, so this can just optimize between up to 10 creatives, videos, assets and things, and you can quickly see what's performing well, what's driving conversions and things like that.
I would recommend, Simon, to find out kind of what works in terms of your creatives. It's useful to create a campaign report or a creative report directly in Facebook. It's something that's, I think, is quite overlooked in terms of Facebook's reporting capabilities, but it allows you to really look into which creatives are performing compared to whatever the objective is, the revenue that you drive, and it can yeah, you can use that as a way to find out what works, rather than looking at campaign level. Cool. I think yeah.
More questions coming in. So using dynamic creatives in the initial testing phase and then moving over to non-dynamic. Generally, for many of the campaigns that I'll run, we'll use dynamic creatives throughout, just because of that, preventing audience fatigue. So you can just keep implementing new tests as you go through. You do find like things like Facebook Donate campaign setups work only with individual ads, so you do have to kind of work around that, and so some of that initial testing could then help shape your dynamic campaign later on. And then I noticed, Jade, you asked about how were the photos shared for the engagement ads. They were just in the comments under the ad.
Awesome.
Cool.
Yeah, I will field any more questions as they come in.
Perfect. I'm gonna move on to in-platform versus landing page tests. Then this is, again, isn't a new idea, but they are becoming increasingly important, given that it's becoming harder to track journeys across platforms and to help remove the drop-off rates that we're seeing between channels. So with cookie banners being updated to comply with GDPR across charity websites and the Facebook privacy changes Gemma mentioned earlier, we're seeing a bigger loss of data across platforms than ever before. So it's essential to test new ways to overcome this in 2022. A hard truth that we face is that no matter how good your ads are from all that creative testing you've done, people won't sign up if the process is too difficult or isn't accessible. And for every additional page or step in the journey, you will see a percentage drop off. So thinking about what information you're getting from people, how easy it is for them to give it to you, and why you're getting it can be really important. Testing on-page optimizations and user journeys can also help improve your conversion rates. And whilst a 3% difference might feel like a small win, especially to senior managers that you're trying to bid in, it can make a considerable difference in revenue. A 3% increase on £10 donations can actually lead to a 150% increase in revenue. So there's huge value to be won. We've also found that learnings from in-platform forms or from creative testing can actually help to inform your landing page. For instance, the hero banner, the introductory test, and the call to action on the landing page. Finally, you can test an additional ask on your thank you page or at the end of your form. You're reaching people at their most engaged state. So what a small additional action could you get them to do? We've all seen the ask to share a petition with friends, like the Greenpeace example shared here, but what cross-selling could you do, could you test this year? Could people set up their Facebook fundraiser page? Could they join a Facebook group? Could they make a donation? We've seen this work really well at the end of lead gen forms and thank you pages during big appeals and popular events to generate a secondary action. So 3 things that you could test this year are lead gen forms. So replace your shorter forms on the website, like register your interest, download your fundraising pack, challenge events and things like that, or some of the value exchange ideas that Gemma mentioned earlier. Secondly, Facebook Donate. So whilst this is a big focus for Facebook at the moment, with new plans to introduce monthly donations coming soon, I would caveat this one with trying a small test first, as we've seen limited results with testing so far. However, increasing the number of Facebook donations increases your retargeting audiences available on the platform, so there can be value in running small tests this year. And finally, Google Optimize. Again, this isn't new, but mirroring the action that people are taking on the platform with a version of your web page can really help to keep a consistent journey. We took this approach with Samaritans Christmas appeal, matching people's donation amount to an impact story on the page. And we've tested other things that can work really well too. And it goes without saying, have a cynical person in mind when you're planning your landing page tests and user journey. How can I make this as easy as possible? So thinking about unnecessary form fields, too many steps in the journey, not testing your landing page properly on mobile, testing landing page optimizations without a clear goal, testing loads of things at the same time, can all limit your learnings.
Brilliant, thanks Marnie. So test number 5, thinking beyond Facebook. Obviously, Facebook is still overwhelmingly the key channel for most charities, giving us lots of opportunities to reach and engage audiences. However, it's always worth looking at diversifying your channel mix to test new opportunities. This could be to support a Facebook campaign, creating additional touch points to amplify your message, or diverting some budget to reach new audiences in a different way. So why is this important? Online behaviours and demographics across different platforms have shifted quite a lot recently, especially during the COVID-19 lockdowns. Trust in platforms like Facebook has also been highlighted over the past few years. And while Facebook is still obviously the largest social media platform in terms of user numbers, some audiences are spending more of their time on other platforms. Other channels also provide opportunities to reach new audiences and for users to engage with you in different ways than Facebook can offer, providing different creative formats to showcase your message. Some campaigns could be more suited to a different platform. For example, we worked with Samaritans on their Big Listen campaign, and as the campaign message was specifically about listening, we felt like an audio platform like Spotify would be a more natural fit for this message. So some key things to consider when looking at new channels to test. Most importantly, ensure that any platform you test is relevant to your objective and your audience. Don't feel pressured to test every shiny new channel that appears. Audiences behave differently across platforms. Different platforms also have their own culture and set of rules. So for example, creative that would work well on Twitter wouldn't necessarily work well on TikTok. So ensure your creative and asks are tailored to the platform where possible. Also balance the investment in time and budget to create a new campaign on a new platform versus the potential reward. Paying for a whole new suite of creative might not be the best option right now. So just looking at a few channels that might be relevant for your upcoming campaigns. Firstly, Spotify. This isn't a platform designed to immediately drive traffic, but it can work well as part of an integrated campaign. It can be a very low cost option, costing just pence for each listen, making them one of the cheapest platforms for brand awareness. As ads aren't skippable, they also have a really high listen rate. There's a few options in terms of format, including standard audio ads that play in between songs, video ads served when users are looking at their screen, and podcast ads. Podcast audiences in particular really surged in 2020, with UK listeners almost doubling, and a quarter of all adults in the UK now listen to a podcast every week. Twitter's obviously been around for a while, but they've made some significant changes to their advertising platform over the past couple of years. And the main benefit of Twitter is that it allows you to join in with a conversation that's already happening. You can target people who have used a specific word or hashtag in their Twitter update, or people that have interacted with tweets containing those words. So you can really focus on high intent audiences. And Pinterest is a platform that more charities are testing due to the niche interest targeting it offers. Pinterest knows a lot about what its audience are interested in, and you can tap into this insight when planning your campaigns. And TikTok's a platform that a lot of people feel that they should be on. It has lots of opportunities to showcase your message in an immersive way. But it's worth considering a few things about this platform. Almost 43% of TikTok's global audience are aged between 18 and 24, with only 3% of the audience older than 55. So be sure that this is a relevant audience for your campaign. This platform also needs portrait video content. It doesn't have to be expensive, as Marnie highlighted earlier. Authentic content can be created that fits the platform much better. Like this example from Citizens Advice, tapping into a TikTok trend. This can still be very time intensive though, even if it is cheap. A good organic presence on the platform can really help amplify and inform your paid content. But again, this requires an investment of time to plan and create content to build your community.
Is it worth just going over that question that got put in the chat?
Yes, there were a couple of questions that I was going to put to you. So the first one was from Jade, and just on the landing page versus in-platform tests that you were talking about, Marnie. Jade said that we've had awful results from Facebook Donate. Any tips on what we can do better? I think it's worth touching on kind of the results that we've seen as well, using Facebook Donate, but any tips you might have?
Yeah, so we tested Facebook Donate a lot over kind of Christmas appeals this year, and we did see generally kind of mixed results and limited results. But what it did allow is to build some really strong remarketing audiences. And I think as Facebook is investing so much time and effort into kind of building this tool, I think it's likely to kind of grow and develop as time goes on, and people might build more trust about donating within the platform. But anything that you can do to stop people having to kind of make several steps, if that's an easier journey than your Facebook Donate form on the website, it could be something to consider.
It might also be worth testing different types of asks with Facebook Donate. We've tested it around Christmas time with kind of more generic asks, but things like emergency appeals and kind of quick cash appeals would be worth testing as well.
Great, thank you. Hopefully that's helpful, Jade. And then there was a question from Edward on lead gen. So he's asked if you've had any issues running lead gen ads with the new page experience. I'm unable to run ads because the error message says lead gen ads are unable to run with the new page experience. I'm not sure if many of our clients have gone on to that new page experience on Facebook yet, but just wanted to sound you both out to see if you had any experience of that.
Isn't something
not seen that, no.
Sorry, Edward, not particularly helpful, but yeah, hopefully you can find the answer with some of those issues. So Simon had a question. We've used TikTok for childline campaigns, seeing strong click-through rates, although we have noticed CPMs increasing over the past 3 to 4 months. Not a question, just a great observation to share. Thank you very much, Simon.
It was in relation to Katie's question around, have you had any charities use TikTok? Yeah, I think one of the things, there's obviously a lot of internal nervousness around it, and Childline is a brand that's aimed at young people, so that's a really nice fit for them. It's worth just thinking about, as Gemma said, is it the right fit for your brand or for your particular campaign? And just worth factoring in as well. You can see kind of higher cost per clicks and factoring all of that in as well.
I would also just add to that, I think, unlike some of the other channels like Facebook, you don't really need to have a strong organic presence to make those platforms work from an advertising perspective. But actually, TikTok is one where they do recommend that you actually have quite a strong organic presence. So if you haven't got that yet and you haven't worked out what works for you in terms of video content on TikTok, then I wouldn't advise diving into advertising on that platform just yet. Play around and test organic TikTok first.
Perfect. So finally, we wanted to leave you with a winning recipe for testing this year. So first of all, think about all your equipment, because these are the essential things you need for successful testing. So having a clear hypothesis, like what are you testing and what are you hoping to achieve? Ensure that the results will be statistically relevant. You can use a formula online to help ensure these results are accurate. Run the test for an appropriate amount of time. If you end the test early, your results won't be conclusive. And whilst testing doesn't have to be expensive, see testing as an investment of your time and budget. And the value is in the learnings, so do make sure you do something with them. Take time to kind of review and analyse them. And then your ingredients are for the finesse. So here are the tests that we looked at today. Audience testing, so some key things to think about is going bigger and broader, using custom match lists and creating lookalikes from them. And that could be really, granular things about the types of behaviours that people have taken on your site, or different donation amounts and things like that. Check to see if your audiences overlap and where you can combine them as well. Next, take time to warm up your audience. This is a bit like preheating your oven. It's essential to engage with your audiences at every stage. So some key things to test could be sharing an engaging video, offering a small ask, and then funnel your audience to get the best results. Next, put together a creative strategy. As we saw with the DEC, this can be extremely valuable and can help you respond to any last-minute campaign or appeal with the right content. Another ingredient to test for this year is leaning into Facebook lead gen forms and also landing page tests. Review your sign-up processes for your key actions. How can you help people engage with you and reduce drop-off rates? And finally, behaviours are changing, and whilst your core audience still may be on Facebook, other channels can offer ways to engage with new audiences, and with the right campaign ask, you can see good results. So that's enough from me. Over to you guys. Is there any other questions that have come through on the chat?
I just had one question about landing page tests and what happens if you don't have the budget or resource to, you know, change your landing page or improve it. I actually have a good example of this that I can kind of add to before I pass on to you, Marnie and Gemma, for your thoughts. But there is a really good tool called Unbounce that we used for RCN, the Royal College of Nursing, where they had this form page that they just didn't have the resource and the time to actually change. So we created them a page on a tool called Unbounce, and it was basically like a skin for that form page, and it really improved the conversion rate of our Facebook and PPC ads. So it was a nice kind of short-term solution to some of their resourcing issues until they were able to invest a bit more time into those pages. So that's always one option if you're short on time. Any other questions? None. Oh, there's two. There's one. Any experience of sending people to platforms such as Just Giving?
Yeah, this is something we're seeing more and more charities move to, and it is a bit of an investment, and actually we've seen that ask for setting up a Just Giving page can be a bit of a blocker, and actually things like setting up a Facebook fundraiser can actually be an easier ask in the sense that people are already there. People are really familiar with Just Giving sites, so it's nothing new, but we have seen the CPAs higher on Just Giving.
Great, thank you. Any other questions that I've missed? It looks like we were able to answer all of them. Yeah, lots of questions that came in. It was really great to see.
Yeah, really good questions, and thank you Gemma and Marnie and Amna as well for taking the time today, and thank you for everybody that joined us this morning. We've had a really good turnout right to the end, so that's always a good sign, and I will send a follow-up email with the recording and the deck, and I'll include any links like Unbounce and things like that that we've referenced as part of the presentation, and hope to see you again at another event soon. Thanks everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye. Bye.
Hi Nicola, sorry, I missed you then. I will send you the transcript after as well. Thank you, bye.